Okay, welcome back. Here we are. We had just finished up talking about the migration, U.S. immigration, the patterns of migration, of immigration to the United States. And we had finished up talking about the third phase, which is the more recent one from 20th and 20th century, so 1900s till today. More recently from LDC, specifically Asia and Latin America. And this really was unlike the Europeans, who this migration pattern was caused from an economic shift in focus from primary, mainly farming, to more secondary manufacturing because of the Industrial Revolution. The more recent one, the more recent from LDCs post-World War II, really 1900s to now. This was caused in also a shift in economic focus, but this is from the secondary manufacturing to more tertiary type jobs, so service type jobs. So shifting from working in a factory to more low-skilled, low-pay service jobs, like landscaping, working in hospitality, hotels, restaurants, and such. Next, let's talk about this impact of immigration on the United States. So let's talk about how this really affected the U.S. So let's talk about these in three phases: the legacy of European migration, the impact of undocumented immigration to the United States, and the destination within the United States. So let's talk about really the legacy of European migration. It really ended with the start of World War I. This is really when the widespread migration from Europe stopped, was after World War I. World War I was 1914, 1918. So really 1920s and beyond. So after World War I, you really didn't see the widespread migration from Europe. And this is partly because of the countries in Europe, their demographic transition and their progress from stage 1 into stage 2 and then into 3. So in the post-1800s, so after the 1800, they had this explosive population growth because of, which caused immigration out, which would have been people leaving the countries. And this was really because of the Industrial Revolution brought new technology, specifically machines, to farming, to food processing, better chemical usage, better transportation methods, allowed more accessibility to different services. It allowed better infrastructure. All of this lowered the crew death rate, which caused them to push into stage 2 of the demographic transition model, which led to overpopulation problems, which means too many people, not enough jobs, which caused a lack of jobs, a lack of housing, a lack of land, a lack of farmland. They had farm consolidation in Europe. All of these are push factors. That farm consolidation, which was called the enclosure movement, this is when they took these small subsistence farms, really, and turned them into large farms. So we call this large commercial farms. This was called the enclosure movement. So this all led to many push factors, and there were pull factors, like they had believed that there was abundant farmland available in the United States, and that there were more freedoms in the United States, that there was more opportunity, more jobs, more housing available there. So people immigrating out to go to the United States, this resulted in less issues in Europe. The U.S. needed people. Europe had too many people, resulted in a win-win, really. So we have U.S. needs people to, U.S. needs people to help develop. Europe needs to get rid of all these extra people, win-win. And so one of the greatest impacts here is that it caused the diffusion of European culture. The Europeans brought with them their culture as well, which we call a relocation diffusion. They brought with them all the Indo-European languages, from German to French to Italian to Russian. They brought Christianity, the major religion in the Americas. They brought their art, their music, their literature, their philosophies. They brought their political and economic structures with them. But they also brought negative things like conflict with the natives, and then conflict with one another inevitably. They exploited resources, they set up plantations, and so that legacy of conflict still exists today. You have this legacy of conflict with the Native Americans, but you also have this legacy of conflict with African Americans because of the forced slavery from Africa to plantations in the South. Next, let's talk about the undocumented immigration to the United States. This is when people enter without proper documentation. They're unsure of the exact number of undocumented people living in the United States, but they think that it is between 7 and 20 million people. Most have come from Mexico, the greatest number ever. This was growing by 350,000 people a year, but since has subsequently declined significantly. Half of the people who come and who are undocumented people have come as tourists or as students. Half cross the border without passports and visas, and then purchase forged documents oftentimes. If they're caught, they're sent out of the country or what they call repatriation. That means they're repatriating them back to their own country. Many just end up returning again. And so in 1986, in the Reagan administration, they passed the Immigration Reform and Control Act. This reduced the flow of the illegal immigrants because it legalized the number of people who are already here and allowed people to apply for work visas, just legalized them. And so they could obtain citizenship if they were already here. It did make it more difficult for new immigrants to get jobs. So it made it more penalizing for them, that they would therefore begin to punish the employer for hiring the illegal immigrants. Last one, let's talk about the destination within the United States. So the migration is not spread evenly around the United States. Half of the people who've migrated have migrated into 4 states: California, New York, Florida, and Texas. Historically, people came on ship, but today people are coming on motor vehicle or foot, some by plane, but most people are traveling by foot or primitive vehicle. Vast majority of people coming from Mexico are traveling in and settling in California, Texas, and Illinois. Illinois to perform those agriculture jobs. People coming from the Caribbean are settling in New York and Florida. People from China, people from India are settling in New York and California. Other people from Asia are settling in California. Again, that's the chain migration. A third of all illegal people are in California. Proximity is a factor. Again, we have chain migration, the core periphery element. These are all factors in settlement of where people are traveling to and then living. People are filling low-skilled, less attractive jobs, specifically in agriculture and construction. So next, let's connect all these concepts together. So let's say we have a country. We're talking about specific countries in the world. And we're talking about the demographic transition model. You have stage 2, stage 3, and stage 4 countries. Remember, this is a continuum. Countries from stage 2 are hoping to progress to stage 3 and then to 4, stage 3 and to 4. That's a continuum. And stage 2 countries, they have explosive population growth, which is causing overpopulation problems. And they have a very high dependency ratio. They have a young population, high crude birth rate, low life expectancy, whereas then whenever you go through stage 3, these should all be declining, except for the life expectancy should be increasing. And then when you get to stage 4, because again, this is a continuum. So how do you get from explosive population to shrinking or stagnant population growth? It has to decline in between. How do you get from a young population to an aging population? Your life expectancy has to increase, and your birth rates have to decrease. And your life expectancy has to increase. So the stage 2 people have a high dependency ratio because they have a lot of young people. But stage 4, they also have a high dependency ratio because of the old people. Remember, dependency ratio, these are the people who are too old and too young to work. Next, we talk about migration. Stage 2 countries tend to be a source of migration, whereas Stage 4 countries tend to be the destination of migration. Then you have level of development. Stage 2 countries, they are LDCs. Stage 3 countries are DCs. Stage 4 countries are MDCs. Therefore, source countries are LDCs. Those with explosive growth, Stage 2, are LDCs. LDCs tend to have, when we talk about their development, they have too many young people, too many children, and not enough workers. And then when you look at MDCs, MDCs have too many old people and not enough workers oftentimes. So in terms of level of development, they both have challenges. When we talk about types of jobs, in an LDC, Stage 2, source country, tend to see most people practicing primary jobs, specifically farming, progressing to secondary jobs like in factories and manufacturing, like what's happening in China, and then like in Stage 4 countries, to tertiary, more service-based economy. Next, whenever we look at the DTM, again, you have Stage 2, Stage 3, Stage 4. You have that explosive population, overpopulation problems in Stage 2 to shrinking, stagnant populations in Stage 4. You have a shift from Stage 2, which are source of migration, to Stage 4, which are the destination for migration. You have this, it lines up in terms of Stage 2 countries are LDCs, Stage 3 countries are DCs, Stage 4 countries are MDCs. Stage 2 countries tend to have, therefore, primary jobs practiced mainly. These are farming jobs, DCs mainly manufacturing and secondary, and MDCs mainly tertiary jobs. Because there are 3 sectors of an economy, 3 focuses. Primary jobs, again, these are when they extract raw materials from the earth. These are all jobs that are in farming, fishing, mining, and logging. All those are extracting raw materials from the earth. Secondary would be manufacturing, typically in factories. This can also be because they're taking raw materials and turning into finished product. This can also be constructing a house or constructing anything. Construction is also secondary because they're manufacturing something, they're building something. Tertiary, these are all services jobs, sales and professional jobs like doctors, lawyers, teachers, bankers, salespeople, hair cutting people, stylists, makeup artists, to the person who's selling retail at 7-Eleven. Next, let's talk about core periphery. Again, you have Stage 2 countries tend to be the periphery countries. They provide the cheap labor, the cheap resources, the cheap products. They have out-migration to the semi or the core. The Stage 3 countries like Mexico, these are the semi-periphery. So Stage 2 would be like LDCs. Again, this would be Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Central American countries like Haiti, Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras. Stage 3 would be like China, India, South Africa, Brazil, Mexico, Chile, Peru, Colombia. This is the semi-periphery. They provide cheaper skilled and unskilled labor and products. Not as cheap as what's in the periphery, but a bit more skilled than the periphery. And this is also typically an out-migration to the core. Core or MDCs, more developed countries. This would be in Anglo-America, Europe, Japan, Oceania, South Korea. They consume products that are made in the periphery and the semi-periphery. They are the economic and political dominance in the global world. These are the MDCs. In terms of wealth and education, the Stage 2 countries, they have the lowest levels of wealth and number of people educated. They have unskilled labor and typically subsistence farmers. The Stage 3 have an increasing level of wealth, increasing number of people who are educated. There are more people living in urban and getting higher skilled and paying jobs. Stage 4, this is the highest level of wealth and education. You have the highest amount of people, percentage of people living in urban and high-skilled, high-paying jobs. Finally, let's talk about this population pyramids that match. So Stage 2, we have this more triangular where you have the fat bottom and the skinny top because of that young population with that high dependency ratio on the bottom, because you see that high crude birth rate here at the bottom and the low life expectancy. We'll pick this slide up in the next video.